The trading station floated in space near the planet Kepler 442b. Ships came and went every day. Aliens from many worlds did business there. Humans traded with them. Everyone followed the rules. No fighting was allowed. No violence. The station was supposed to be safe for everyone. Lisa Morrison worked as a pilot. She flew cargo ships between human colonies and alien trading posts. She was good at her job. Other pilots respected her. Even the aliens liked working with her. She was fair and honest. She smiled a lot and made friends easily. Lisa had been doing this work for 8 years. Nothing bad had ever happened to her before. That morning started like any other day. Lisa docked her ship at the station. She had a cargo of metal from Earth, rare metals that aliens needed for their machines. A Xanthari merchant named Krasthor was waiting for the delivery. The Xanthari were big aliens. Very big, they stood 8 feet tall. They had 4 arms. Their skin was like armor. They were strong, much stronger than humans. Lisa walked into the loading bay with her documents. The papers showed exactly what she was delivering. 3 independent inspectors had checked everything. The cargo was correct. Every piece of metal was accounted for. Lisa carried the sealed documents in her hand. Krasthor looked at the cargo. His face changed. He became angry. He said the shipment was wrong. He said 20% of the metal was missing. Lisa was confused. She showed him the documents. Everything was there. The inspectors had checked 3 times. The seals were not broken. The Xanthari shouted at her. He called her a liar. He said humans always tried to cheat. Lisa stayed calm. She had dealt with angry customers before. She spoke in a quiet voice. She explained that the cargo was correct. If he disagreed, they could go to station arbitration. Officials would check everything. They would settle the dispute fairly. That was when Krasthor hit her. The Xanthari's hand moved fast. Too fast for Lisa to see. The blow caught her across the face. The force was incredible. Lisa flew backward through the air. She traveled 15 feet before hitting the metal wall. Her body made a terrible sound when it struck. Bones broke. Her head cracked against the bulkhead. Lisa fell to the floor. She could not move. She could not breathe right. Blood came from her nose and mouth. The pain was everywhere. She tried to stay conscious, but darkness pulled at her mind. Other people in the loading bay started shouting. Someone called for security. Someone else called for medical help. Aliens and humans rushed over to Lisa. They were afraid to move her. They could see she was badly hurt. Station security arrived in less than 3 minutes. They found Krasthor standing over Lisa. He was still angry. He was saying she deserved it for trying to cheat him. The security officers arrested him immediately. They put restraints on all 4 of his arms. They took him away. The medical team came next. They had equipment for many different species. They worked fast. They checked Lisa's injuries. The results were bad, very bad. Her skull was fractured. 3 ribs were broken. One of her lungs had collapsed. She was bleeding inside. The doctors put her on a stretcher. They rushed her to the medical center. In the medical center, doctors worked to save her life. They put tubes in her body. Machines helped her breathe. Her brain was swelling. The doctors had to put her to sleep. A medical coma, they called it. It would help her brain heal. They said she might die. They said if she lived, she might never wake up. They said they would do everything they could. The station administrator sent an emergency message to Earth. The message went to the military first. Lisa's emergency contact was her husband, Commander Jake Morrison. He was serving on a ship called the Constellation. The ship was 3 days away, even at maximum speed. Jake was on the bridge when he got the message. He read it once. Then he read it again. His hand started shaking. Other officers on the bridge saw his face change. They had never seen their commander look like that before. One of them asked if he was okay. Jake did not answer. He called the ship's captain. He explained the situation. His wife was in critical condition on Station Kepler. He needed to go there immediately. The captain agreed without hesitation. The Constellation changed course. They pushed the engines to maximum speed. 3 days to reach the station. 3 days of not knowing if Lisa would live or die. Jake went to his quarters. He sat on his bunk. He looked at a picture of Lisa. It was from their wedding day. She was smiling. That smile was one of the things he loved most about her. Now she was lying in a hospital bed, broken, hurt by an alien who hit her for no good reason. Jake Morrison was a soldier. He had been in the military for 15 years. He had fought in battles. He had led missions in dangerous places. Other soldiers respected him. He was known for staying calm under pressure. He was known for thinking clearly in difficult situations. He was known for protecting his people, but Lisa was not just one of his people. She was his wife, the woman he loved, the person he had promised to protect and care for, and someone had hurt her. Someone had almost killed her. The alien was in custody, the message said. There would be a trial. Justice would be served according to galactic law. Jake sat in the darkness of his quarters. His mind was working, thinking, planning. Galactic law was not human law. Galactic justice was not human justice. The aliens had their rules. But humans had rules too. Older rules. Deeper rules. Rules about what you did when someone hurt your family. The 3 days passed slowly. Jake spent most of his time alone. He made calls to his contacts, other ship commanders, officers he had served with, people who owed him favors, people who understood loyalty. He sent messages carefully, not ordering, just asking, just letting them know what happened. When the constellation finally reached Station Kepler, Jake was ready. He left the ship immediately. He went straight to the medical center. Station security met him at the door. They wanted to explain the situation. Jake ignored them. He pushed past and went to find his wife. Lisa was in a private room. Machines surrounded her bed. Tubes connected to her body. Her face was swollen and bruised. Bandages covered her head. The steady beep of monitors was the only sound. Jake stood in the doorway. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to her bedside and took her hand. A doctor came in. She was human. Dr. Karen Phillips. She had been taking care of Lisa since the incident. She told Jake about the injuries, the broken bones, the collapsed lung, the skull fracture, the swelling in her brain. Lisa was stable now, the doctor said. She would probably survive, but her recovery would take months, maybe longer. Jake asked about Krasthor. The doctor said he was in custody. There would be a trial. The station administrator wanted to speak with Jake about it. Jake nodded slowly. He kept holding Lisa's hand. After the doctor left, Jake sat beside the bed. He watched his wife breathing. The machines did most of the work for her. She looked so small, so fragile. The Xanthari had hit her like she was nothing, like her life did not matter, like there would be no consequences. Jake Morrison made a decision in that moment, a decision that would change everything. He would show Krasthor that there were consequences. He would show the Xanthari that human lives mattered. He would show the entire galaxy that you did not hurt a human woman and walk away with just a fine. He would teach them all a lesson they would never forget. The station administrator came to see Jake the next morning. His name was Zelith. He was a Vakram, which meant he looked like a tall, thin creature with gray skin and large eyes. Zelith seemed nervous. He kept adjusting his official robes. He explained that he understood Jake was upset. The situation was unfortunate, very unfortunate, but everything was being handled properly. Jake listened without speaking. He sat in a chair next to Lisa's bed. His hand still held hers. His eyes never left Zelith's face. The administrator continued talking. He said Krasthor would face trial. The Galactic Commerce Authority had clear rules about violence. The Xanthari would be punished. There would be fines, maybe some restriction on his trading license. Perhaps a short period of house arrest on his homeworld. Jake finally spoke. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. He asked how much the fine would be. Zelith checked his datapad. Probably around 50,000 galactic credits, he said. Maybe more if the judges were strict. Jake asked how long the house arrest might last. Zelith looked uncomfortable. Perhaps 6 months. Maybe a year at most. Jake looked at his wife. Her face was still swollen. The machine still breathed for her. She might never fully recover. She would carry scars for the rest of her life. And the alien who did this would pay a fine and stay home for a few months. Jake turned back to Zelith. He said one word. No, Zelith did not understand. What did Jake mean by no? The trial would happen according to law. Jake could not refuse the legal process. Jake stood up slowly. He looked down at the shorter alien. He explained very carefully. That punishment was not acceptable, not even close. Zalith tried to argue. These were galactic laws. Humans had agreed to follow them when they joined the trading networks. Jake had no choice in the matter. Jake walked to the window. Outside, he could see space. Stars everywhere, ships moving between the station and the planets. He spoke without turning around. He told Zalith that the galaxy was about to learn something about humans. Something important. When you hurt one of them, the rest respond. It did not matter what galactic law said. It did not matter what treaties were signed. Humans protected their own. Always. Zalith left the room confused and worried. He sent messages to his superiors. He explained that the human commander was not accepting the situation. The response came back quickly. Keep him calm. Offer compensation to his wife. Make sure this does not escalate. The Galactic Commerce Authority did not want problems with humans. Humans were new to galactic trade, but they were becoming important partners. Jake spent the next day making more calls. He contacted Henry Cole, his second-in-command on the Constellation. Henry had served with Jake for 7 years. They had been through difficult situations together. Jake trusted him completely. He explained what he needed. Henry did not ask questions. He just said yes. Whatever Jake needed, the crew would support him. Jake also sent messages to other human ships in nearby systems. He used old military codes, private channels. He did not order anyone to help. He just told them what happened. His wife had been attacked. She nearly died. The alien responsible would get a light punishment under galactic law. He was going to make sure real justice was served. Anyone who wanted to support him was welcome. The responses came in fast. 12 ship captains changed their courses within hours. They were coming to Station Kepler. Some were military vessels. Others were civilian cargo ships. A few were private ships owned by colonists and traders. They all had one thing in common. They were human, and they understood what it meant when one of their own was hurt. More messages arrived over the next 2 days. 20 ships, 30 ships, 40 ships. They were coming from different star systems. Some would take a week to arrive. Others were already close. The word spread through human networks across the galaxy. Lisa Morrison had been attacked by an alien. Her husband was calling for support. Every human who heard the story felt something deep inside. Anger, solidarity, the need to show the galaxy that humans could not be pushed around. On the third day, representatives from the Zinthari clan arrived. They wanted to settle things quietly. Krasthor's family was wealthy and powerful. They did not want a scandal. They offered compensation to Lisa, a large amount of money, enough to pay for all medical treatment, enough to support her family for years. They thought this would solve the problem. The meeting took place in a private conference room. Jake sat across from 3 Zinthari. One was a lawyer named Vormel. The other 2 were family members of Krasthor. They wore expensive clothing. Their armor plating was polished and decorated. They clearly thought they were important people. Vormel explained the offer. 200,000 galactic credits. That was more than most humans made in 10 years. It was generous, he said. Very generous. The clan wanted to make peace. They wanted to avoid further conflict. If Jake accepted this money, everyone could move forward. The incident would be forgotten. Jake listened to the entire presentation. He did not interrupt. He did not ask questions. When Vormel finished, Jake leaned back in his chair. He looked at each of the Zinthari in turn. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, almost friendly, but his words were not friendly at all. He told them their money meant nothing to him. He told them that you could not buy your way out of what Krasthor did. He told them that their laws and their traditions did not apply here. Not anymore. His wife was hurt. That was all that mattered, and there would be consequences. Real consequences. Not fines, not house arrest. Real punishment. The Zinthari were shocked. No one talked to them like this. They were powerful. Their clan controlled major trade routes. They had influence with the Galactic Commerce Authority. One of the family members started to argue. He said Jake did not understand how things worked. Jake cut him off. He said the Zinthari did not understand how humans worked. But they were about to learn. Vormel tried to negotiate. Perhaps they could increase the offer. Perhaps 300,000 credits. Or maybe the clan could make public statements condemning Krasthor's actions. Jake stood up. The meeting was over. He told them to tell their clan to prepare. Tell them that humans were coming. Tell them that money and influence would not save Krasthor. Tell them that they made a mistake when they hurt Lisa Morrison. After the Zinthari left, Jake returned to Lisa's room. Dr. Phillips had good news. The swelling in Lisa's brain was going down. Her other injuries were healing. She might wake up soon, maybe in a few days. Jake felt relief wash over him. She would survive. She would recover. That was the most important thing, but the relief did not change his plans. Krasthor would still face justice. Human justice. The galaxy needed to understand that human lives had value, that violence against humans had consequences, that the rules protecting humans could not be bought or negotiated away. Station sensors detected the first arriving ships on the 4th day. 3 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. They took up positions in space around Kepler. They did not approach the station. They did not threaten anyone. They just stayed there, watching, waiting. Zelith called an emergency meeting with station security. What were the humans doing? Why were they gathering here? Should the station request military assistance? No one had good answers. The human ships were not breaking any laws. They were in legal positions. They were not blocking traffic. But their presence was making everyone nervous. More ships arrived the next day. Then more the day after that. By the 6th day, 20 human vessels surrounded Station Kepler. Military ships, cargo ships, private vessels. All of them maintaining position. All of them ready. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. Humans were here, and they were not leaving until they got what they wanted. The galaxy was starting to notice. News networks reported on the situation. Analysts tried to explain what was happening. Some said it was a show of force. Others said it was a cultural misunderstanding. A few said it was something the galaxy had never seen before, humans protecting one of their own, not because of treaties or laws, but because that was what humans did. Lisa woke up on the 7th day. Her eyes opened slowly. Everything was blurry at first. She could hear beeping sounds, medical equipment. She tried to move, but pain shot through her body. A nurse noticed she was awake and called for the doctor. Dr. Phillips arrived quickly. She checked Lisa's vital signs and asked simple questions. What is your name? Do you know where you are? Can you see me clearly? Lisa answered each question. Her voice was weak but clear. She remembered being on the station. She remembered the argument with Krasthor. She remembered him hitting her. After that, everything was blank. Dr. Phillips explained what happened. She had been in a coma for a week. Her injuries were serious, but she was healing. She would need time to recover fully. Lisa asked about Jake. Was he here? The doctor smiled and said he had barely left her side. He was sleeping in the next room. She would get him. Lisa waited. A few minutes later, Jake walked through the door. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His uniform was wrinkled, but when he saw Lisa awake, his face changed. Relief flooded through him. He sat beside her bed and took her hand gently. She smiled at him despite the pain. She tried to make a joke about how she must look terrible. Jake shook his head. She looked beautiful. She was alive. That was all that mattered. They sat together quietly for a while, just being together, just grateful that she had survived. Later that day, Lisa asked what would happen to Krasthor. Jake hesitated. He did not want to worry her. She needed to focus on healing. But Lisa knew him too well. She could see something in his eyes, something that told her he was planning something. She squeezed his hand and asked him to tell her the truth. Jake explained the situation. The trial was scheduled for 3 days from now. Under galactic law, Krasthor would probably get a fine and short house arrest. Jake had refused to accept that punishment. He had called for support from other humans. Ships were gathering around the station. He was going to make sure real justice happened. Lisa listened carefully. Then she said something that surprised him. She told him to be careful. But she also told him she understood. She knew what he had to do. The trial took place in the station's main courtroom. The room was large enough to hold representatives from many species. Cameras recorded everything for broadcast throughout the system. 3 judges sat at the front. One was Vokrim, one was Zenthari, one was from a species called the Arkesh. They wore official robes that marked their positions. Krazathor entered the courtroom in restraints. Security guards walked on each side of him. He still looked arrogant. He did not seem worried. His family had assured him everything would be fine. The punishment would be light. He would be free soon. He looked around the courtroom until his eyes found Jake. The two locked gazes for a moment. Krazathor looked away first. The prosecution presented their case first. They showed medical records of Lisa's injuries. They played security footage from 3 different angles. Everyone in the courtroom could see exactly what happened. Krazathor hitting Lisa, her body flying through the air, the terrible impact against the wall. Several people in the audience looked away. It was hard to watch. Witnesses testified next. People who had been in the loading bay. They all said the same thing. Lisa had been professional and calm. Krazathor had become angry over nothing. He had attacked her without warning. There was no justification for what he did. The evidence was overwhelming. Then the defense presented their argument. Vormel stood and addressed the judges. He did not deny what happened. The evidence was too clear. Instead, he argued about cultural differences. Among the Zenthari, physical confrontation was normal. It was how they settled disputes. Krazathor had acted according to his species' customs. He did not understand that humans were so fragile. The blow that nearly killed Lisa would have been minor among his own people. Vormel continued. He said, Krazathor should not be punished harshly for a cultural misunderstanding. The Zenthari had already offered generous compensation. The clan was willing to make amends. Surely that should be considered when determining punishment. The defense asked for leniency, a fine and perhaps some mandatory training about human physiology. The judges deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the head judge announced the verdict. Krazathor was guilty of assault. The evidence left no doubt. However, the judges acknowledged the cultural factors involved. The sentence was 50,000 galactic credits in fines, 6 months suspension of trading privileges, mandatory cultural sensitivity training, and 1 year of supervised probation. The courtroom erupted. Some aliens seemed satisfied with the verdict. Others looked uncomfortable. The human observers were silent. They all looked at Jake Morrison. He sat very still. His face showed no emotion. The head judge asked if the human representative wished to make a statement. Jake stood slowly. He looked at each judge in turn. Then he looked at Krazathor. Finally, he spoke. His voice carried throughout the courtroom. It was broadcast to every ship in the system. Millions of beings heard what he said next. Your laws have spoken. Now mine will. Jake pulled a small device from his pocket. It was a military transponder, modified for this specific purpose. He pressed a button. The signal went out instantly. Every human ship surrounding the station received it at the same moment. They had been waiting for this. They had known it was coming. Within seconds, the human ships moved. They did not approach the station. They did not fire weapons. They simply reorganized their positions. They formed a perfect sphere around Station Kepler. Each ship was exactly the same distance from the station. Each ship had clear fields of fire covering all approach vectors. It was a textbook military formation. Station sensors immediately detected the change. Alarms started going off. The defense grid activated automatically. Zelith burst into the courtroom followed by security personnel. He pointed at Jake and shouted, "This was an act of war." The humans had no authority. They must stand down immediately or face consequences from the entire Galactic Commerce Authority. Jake remained calm. He explained very clearly. The human ships were in legal positions. They were not threatening anyone. They were not blocking traffic. They had simply taken up defensive positions near an incident involving human casualties. This was completely within their rights under galactic law. Zelith tried to argue, but Jake cut him off. The humans were not leaving, not until real justice was served. The judges looked at each other. This situation was unprecedented. No species had ever responded to a verdict like this. They did not know what to do. The Xanthari delegation demanded that the humans be forced to leave. The Vokrim representatives suggested negotiation. The Arkesh observer said this was exactly what happened when you gave light punishments for serious crimes. Jake made his demands clear. Krazathor would be transferred to human custody. He would serve time in a human prison facility under human law. 8 years minimum. The Xanthari clan would issue a formal public apology, and the Galactic Commerce Authority would establish new protocols protecting humans from violence by other species. These were his terms, non-negotiable. The courtroom descended into chaos. Aliens argued with each other. The judges called for order. Krazathor's family shouted that this was unacceptable. Zelith kept saying that Jake had no authority. But through it all, Jake stood quietly, waiting. He had made his move. Now he would see how the galaxy responded. Outside the station, more human ships were arriving every hour. The sphere around Kepler was growing tighter. More weapon systems were powering up. The humans were not attacking, but they were making it very clear that they could, if they wanted to. The message was simple: give us justice or face the consequences. The standoff continued through the night. Human ships maintained their positions around Station Kepler. Inside the station, emergency meetings happened continuously. Representatives from dozens of species argued about what to do. Some wanted to call for military intervention. Others wanted to negotiate. Everyone was worried about what would happen if this situation escalated into actual conflict. The Galactic Commerce Authority sent senior officials to the station. They arrived on fast ships within 12 hours. Their job was to resolve the crisis peacefully. They met with Jake in a secure conference room. 5 officials sat across from him. They represented the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were used to getting their way. The lead official was named Koreth. He was an older Vokrim who had served the Commerce Authority for 40 years. He had resolved hundreds of disputes. He prided himself on finding solutions that satisfied everyone. He looked at Jake with what he hoped was a wise and understanding expression. He began by acknowledging that the situation with Lisa Morrison was tragic. No one disputed that. But Koreth continued the human response was disproportionate. The tribunal had made its decision according to established law. Jake could not simply reject a legal verdict because he disagreed with it. That was not how galactic society worked. If every species did that, there would be chaos. The system only functioned when everyone accepted its authority. Jake listened politely. When Koreth finished, Jake asked a simple question. Did the official think the punishment fit the crime? Koreth hesitated. That was not the point, he said. The law was the law. Jake shook his head. That was exactly the point. The law was wrong. A man nearly killed his wife and would face almost no real consequences. That was not justice. Another official tried a different approach. She was Arkesh, a species known for their diplomatic skills. She suggested a compromise. Perhaps the Galactic Commerce Authority could increase the fine significantly. Maybe add more restrictions on Krazathor's movements. Would that be acceptable? Jake said no. Money was not the answer. Restrictions were not enough. Krazathor needed to actually serve time in prison. Real prison. Not house arrest on his comfortable home world. The negotiations continued for hours. The officials tried everything they could think of. They offered to create special oversight of Krazathor. They promised to review sentencing guidelines for future cases. They suggested establishing a joint human-alien committee to study the issue. Jake rejected everything. His demands had not changed. 8 years in human custody, public apology, new protection protocols, nothing less. On the second day of the standoff, something significant happened. A full Earth Defense Force battle group arrived at the edge of the system. Admiral Catherine Hayes commanded the group from the carrier Roosevelt. The battle group included 6 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and support vessels. It was a serious military force. They did not approach the station. They just took up positions and waited. Admiral Hayes sent a formal message to Station Kepler. She requested an update on Commander Morrison and his wife's condition. The message was perfectly professional, but everyone understood what it really meant. Earth's military was here. They were supporting Jake, and they were not going anywhere. The arrival of the battle group changed everything. This was no longer just about one commander and some civilian ships. This was about Earth's military power. The Galactic Commerce Authority officials realized they could not simply ignore Jake's demands anymore. If they tried to force the humans to leave, there could be a real battle. No one wanted that. The Zenthari clan finally understood they were in serious trouble. Their lawyer Vormel requested a private meeting with Jake. No officials, no observers, just the two of them. Jake agreed. They met in a small room away from the main conferences. Vormel looked tired and stressed. His earlier confidence was gone. Vormel spoke carefully. He said his clan wanted to avoid further problems. They now understood that humans viewed these matters differently than other species. They were prepared to accept most of Jake's terms with some modifications. Would Jake be willing to negotiate details? Jake said he would listen, but he would not compromise on the core requirements. The negotiations took another 6 hours. They discussed every detail. Instead of 8 years, Krasthor would serve 6 years with possibility of early release after 4 for good behavior. The apology would be issued through official channels rather than broadcast publicly. The new protection protocols would be drafted jointly by human and galactic representatives working together. Jake considered each point carefully. He knew he could not get everything exactly as he wanted. Compromise was necessary, but the core elements were there. Real prison time. Formal apology. New rules to protect humans. He looked at Vormel and said one word. Acceptable. The relief on Vormel's face was obvious. He thanked Jake for being reasonable. Jake did not respond to that. He was not being reasonable. He was being fair. There was a difference. The Zenthari would learn that difference. The whole galaxy would learn it. The formal agreement was prepared quickly. Legal experts from multiple species reviewed every word. The Galactic Commerce Authority officials looked unhappy, but they signed the document. The Zenthari clan representatives signed with obvious reluctance. Jake signed last. His signature was firm and clear. Krasthor was transferred to human custody that same day. Military personnel from the Roosevelt came to get him. They put him in proper restraints. They loaded him onto a shuttle. He would spend the next several years in a human prison facility on a colony world. He would learn what it meant to actually face consequences for his actions. The Zenthari clan issued their apology through diplomatic channels. The statement acknowledged that Krasthor had caused serious harm to Lisa Morrison. It expressed regret for the incident. It pledged that the clan would work to ensure such incidents never happened again. The apology was carefully worded but genuine. They understood now what happened when you hurt a human. The Galactic Commerce Authority announced that it would convene a special session. The purpose was to draft new protocols for protecting sentient beings from physical harm. Human representatives would participate as full partners in the process. The new rules would take human concerns seriously. They would ensure that cultural differences could not be used as an excuse for violence. As soon as the agreements were signed, Jake sent a signal to the human ships. They began to disperse. Some returned to their original routes. Others stayed in the system for a few more days before leaving. The battle group remained for a week to ensure the agreements were honored. Then they too departed. Station Kepler slowly returned to normal. Ships came and went. Trade resumed. But something had changed. Everyone on the station remembered what happened. They remembered how the humans had responded when one of their own was hurt. They remembered the ships gathering, the standoff, the negotiations. Most importantly, they remembered that the humans had won. Jake returned to Lisa's room after everything was settled. She was sitting up now, still weak but improving every day. She had followed the news reports. She knew what he had done. She knew what it had cost him. The political fallout would follow him for years. Some officials in Earth's government were angry that he had created such a crisis. But Lisa also knew that her husband had done what he believed was right. He had stood up for her. He had stood up for all humans who might face similar situations in the future. He had taught the galaxy that human lives had value, that violence against humans had real consequences. She reached for his hand and said thank you. Jake squeezed her hand gently. He told her there was nothing to thank him for. He had only done what any husband would do, what any human would do. They protected their own. Always. That was who they were. That was what made them human. News of what happened at Station Kepler spread quickly through the galaxy. Every species heard the story. Some heard it from official reports. Others heard it from traders and travelers. The story grew as it spread. Some details changed, but the core message remained the same. A human woman was hurt. Her husband mobilized dozens of ships. He forced the galaxy to give real justice. In the weeks after the incident, diplomats and scholars studied what happened. They analyzed every decision, every move, every statement. They tried to understand why the humans had reacted so strongly. Why had they risked so much for one person? Other species did not respond that way. When one of their citizens was hurt, they filed complaints. They went through proper channels. They accepted the system's decisions, but humans were different. The experts started to see patterns in human behavior. Throughout human history, they found similar stories. Stories of people traveling great distances to rescue someone. Stories of impossible battles fought to protect comrades. Stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when those they cared about were threatened. These were not just stories. They were instructions for how to be human. A Vakrim anthropologist named Telesh published a paper about the incident. She explained that humans formed emotional bonds that other species found unusual. These bonds made humans willing to sacrifice their own interests for others. It was not rational by most species standards, but it was fundamental to human nature. Humans who heard about Lisa Morrison felt her pain. They felt protective of her. They wanted justice for her even though they had never met her. The paper became required reading in diplomatic academies across the galaxy. Future officials needed to understand this aspect of human psychology. When dealing with humans, you could not just think about logical interests. You had to consider their emotional connections. You had to remember that hurting one human meant angering all of them. The new protection protocols took 6 months to finalize. Human representatives worked with galactic officials to create fair rules. The protocols established clear standards for physical interactions between species. They required training for anyone who regularly dealt with humans. They created harsher penalties for unprovoked violence. Most importantly, they acknowledged that cultural differences could not excuse serious harm. The protocols became known informally as the Morrison Accords. The name spread through human communities first. Then other species started using it too. Everyone knew where the name came from. Everyone understood what it meant. Commander Morrison had changed galactic law because someone hurt his wife. That was the kind of thing humans did. Lisa's recovery took 4 months. She had to learn to walk again. Physical therapy was long and painful, but she worked hard. Dr. Phillips said she was an excellent patient, determined, strong. By the 3rd month, Lisa was moving around on her own. By the 4th month, she was cleared for light duty. The doctors were amazed by how well she healed. Jake was with her through all of it. He had taken leave from military service to care for her. Earth's government had been understanding about that. They had been less understanding about the incident itself. Some officials thought Jake had gone too far. They worried about diplomatic relationships. They complained about the risk of conflict. But others defended him. Public opinion on Earth was strongly in Jake's favor. Most humans thought he had done exactly the right thing. Eventually, the military decided not to punish Jake. They could not publicly approve of what he did, but they would not condemn it either. Jake was given the option to return to active duty or retire with full honors. He chose to retire. He had served 15 years. That was enough. Now he wanted to focus on his life with Lisa. Jake and Lisa moved to a colony world called New Hope. It was on the edge of human space, a quiet place where they could start over. They bought a small piece of land near a lake. They built a house together. Jake did most of the construction work himself. Lisa helped when she could. It felt good to build something with their own hands. They also bought a small cargo ship. Nothing fancy, just big enough for 2 people to operate. Lisa wanted to return to flying. The doctors had cleared her. She said sitting around doing nothing was driving her crazy. Jake understood. Flying was part of who she was. So they became independent traders, running cargo between colonies, living life on their own terms. The first time they docked at a trading station after moving to New Hope, something interesting happened. They were unloading cargo when a group of alien merchants approached. One was Xanthari. Lisa tensed up. She could not help it. The Xanthari noticed her reaction. He stopped several feet away and spoke in careful English. He said he wanted to apologize on behalf of his species. What Krasthor did was wrong. The Xanthari people did not condone such violence. He hoped she would recover fully. Lisa was surprised. She thanked him for the apology. The Zenthari bowed slightly and walked away. Other aliens approached after that. A Vulcan trader, an Arkesh merchant, even some species Lisa had never met before. They all expressed concern for her health. They all said they were glad the situation had been resolved fairly. Word had spread. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew what had happened to her. Over the next year, Jake and Lisa noticed a pattern. When they traveled to different stations, aliens treated them with unusual respect. Disputes were settled quickly and fairly. No one tried to cheat them. No one raised their voice in anger. It was like they had an invisible shield around them. The shield was not made of metal or energy. It was made of reputation. Everyone knew that if you hurt these humans, there would be consequences. Jake and Lisa did not talk much about Station Kepler. It was in the past. Done. Settled. But sometimes late at night, sitting on their porch looking at the stars, Lisa would thank Jake again. He always said the same thing. He had only done what was necessary, what any decent person would do. She would shake her head and smile. Most people would have accepted the verdict. Most people would have moved on. But Jake was not most people. 2 years after the incident, a documentary crew came to interview them. The crew was from Earth. They were making a film about human expansion into the galaxy. They wanted to include the Station Kepler incident as a key moment, a turning point when the galaxy learned to respect humans. Jake and Lisa were reluctant at first. They did not want to relive those painful memories, but the documentary makers convinced them that the story was important. Other humans needed to know what happened. They needed to understand that their government and their people would stand up for them, that they were not alone out here among the stars. Finally, Jake and Lisa agreed to participate. They did one long interview. They answered questions honestly. Then they asked not to be bothered anymore. The documentary aired 6 months later. It became very popular on Earth and in human colonies. Young people watched it in schools. Military academies used it for training. It showed that being strong was not just about weapons and ships. It was also about standing up for your values, about protecting those who could not protect themselves, about making sure justice actually happened. Admiral Hayes was also interviewed for the documentary. The interviewer asked her to explain why the Station Kepler incident was significant. Hayes thought carefully before answering. She said that for thousands of years before reaching space, humans told stories about heroes, people who would fight impossible battles for those they loved. The galaxy thought those were just stories, just fiction. Commander Morrison taught them that for humans those stories were real. They were who humans were at their core. The interviewer asked if that meant humans were more violent than other species. Hayes shook her head. No, it meant humans were more loyal, more protective, more willing to stand up for each other. Those traits could lead to conflict, but they also made humans reliable allies, dangerous enemies, and people you did not want to cross without good reason. 3 years after Station Kepler, Lisa was completely healthy. Her scars had faded. She still had some pain when the weather changed, but otherwise she felt fine. She and Jake had built a good life on New Hope. They had friends in the colony. Their trading business was successful. They were happy, but they also knew their story was bigger than just them. Other humans were safer because of what happened. Other species were more careful because of what they had learned. The galaxy was a little bit fairer. Justice meant something real now. Not just fines and minor punishments. Real consequences for real harm. That was Jake Morrison's legacy. That was what he had accomplished when he refused to accept an unjust verdict. He had taught the galaxy that humans protected their own, always, without exception, and anyone who forgot that lesson would be reminded quickly and firmly. 5 years after the incident, the galaxy looked different, not in obvious ways. The same species still traded with each other. The same ships traveled the same routes. The same stations floated in the same places. But something fundamental had changed in how beings treated each other, especially how they treated humans. A new generation of aliens was growing up with the Morrison Accords as normal. They learned about human psychology in school. They studied the proper ways to interact with humans. They understood that humans formed strong emotional bonds, that hurting one human meant answering to many more. It was just part of galactic life now, like knowing that Vokrim preferred cool temperatures, or that Arkesh communicated partly through scent. Human traders reported fewer problems. Disputes still happened, of course. That was normal in business. But the disputes were settled more fairly now. No one tried to intimidate human merchants. No one used physical force to win arguments. The few times someone forgot these lessons, they were reminded quickly by their own people. No species wanted to risk another Station Kepler situation. Jake and Lisa Morrison became somewhat famous, though they never wanted that. Their names appeared in history books. Students wrote papers about them. Some humans even named their children after them. Jake and Lisa found this embarrassing. They were just ordinary people who faced an awful situation. They did what anyone would do. But others saw them as symbols. Proof that humans mattered in the galaxy. Proof that justice could win over bureaucracy. Their quiet life on New Hope suited them well. They took trading jobs when they wanted. They turned down jobs when they wanted rest. Money was not a problem. They had enough. More than enough. Lisa's compensation from the Zenthari clan had been substantial. Plus, their trading business was successful. They could afford to be selective about their work. Other humans sometimes sought them out for advice. Young traders who faced problems. Colonists who dealt with difficult alien neighbors. Military officers studying human-alien relations. Jake and Lisa helped when they could. They shared what they learned. But they always emphasized the same point. You did not need to be special to stand up for what was right. You just needed to be willing to act. Krasthor served 4 years in human prison before being released on parole. The experience changed him completely. Human prisons were not cruel. They did not torture inmates, but they were very different from Zenthari detention facilities. Krasthor had to follow strict rules. He had to work. He had to attend counseling sessions about violence and cultural understanding. By the time he was released, he was a different person. After his release, Krasthor did something surprising. He requested permission to meet Lisa Morrison. He wanted to apologize in person. Lisa was not sure at first. The memories of that day were still painful, but Jake thought she should consider it. Closure might help. After thinking about it for several weeks, Lisa agreed. They met on a neutral station, a small conference room with security nearby just in case. Krasthor looked different than Lisa remembered. Smaller somehow, less arrogant. He stood across the room and spoke in careful English. He said he was deeply sorry for what he did. He had been angry that day for reasons that had nothing to do with her. He had taken out his frustration on an innocent person. There was no excuse for his actions. He would carry the shame of it for the rest of his life. Lisa listened. She could see he meant it. The apology was genuine. She said she accepted it. She also said she hoped he learned from the experience, that he would treat others better in the future. Krasthor promised he would. He had spent 4 years thinking about what he did, about the pain he caused, about how close he came to killing someone. He would never raise his hand in anger again. The meeting lasted less than an hour. When it was over, Lisa felt lighter. She had not realized how much anger she was still carrying. Seeing Krasthor humbled and genuinely remorseful helped. It did not erase what happened. Nothing could do that. But it helped her move forward. She could let go of the bitterness now. Jake was proud of her for taking that meeting. He knew how hard it was. He had wanted to refuse the request when it first came. His instinct was still to protect Lisa from anything that might hurt her. But she was stronger than he sometimes gave her credit for. She did not need protection from a broken alien seeking forgiveness. She could handle it herself. Years continued to pass. Human colonies grew. More humans ventured into the galaxy. They found new worlds to settle. They made new friends among alien species. They built businesses and families and lives far from Earth. And everywhere they went, they carried the lessons of Station Kepler with them. When humans gathered at trading stations or colony meetings, they told stories. Stories about brave explorers and clever traders. Stories about challenges overcome and friendships formed. And sometimes they told the story of Lisa and Jake Morrison. The story changed a bit with each telling. Details shifted. But the core remained true. An alien hurt a human woman. Her husband showed the galaxy why that was a mistake. The story served a purpose. It reminded humans that they were not alone, that their fellow humans would stand up for them. It reminded aliens that humans took care of each other, that you could not abuse humans without facing consequences. It was a story with power, a story that shaped how beings treated each other. 10 years after Station Kepler, Jake and Lisa were still together on New Hope. They had grown older. Some gray showed in their hair now. Lisa's old injuries bothered her more on cold days. Jake's knees hurt when he worked too long in the garden. But they were happy. They had each other. They had a good life. That was enough. One evening, sitting on their porch watching the sunset, Lisa asked Jake if he had any regrets. He thought about it for a long time before answering. He said no, everything he did was necessary. He would make the same choices again if he had to. Lisa smiled and took his hand. She said she felt the same way. They had been through something terrible, but they came out stronger on the other side. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. New Hope had beautiful sunsets. They sat together in comfortable silence. After all these years, they did not need words to communicate. They understood each other perfectly. They had faced the worst together and survived. Whatever came next, they would handle it the same way. Together, across the galaxy, millions of humans and billions of aliens went about their lives, trading, working, building, living. Most of them never thought about Station Kepler anymore. It was just history, something that happened years ago. But the effects of that incident touched everything. The rules that protected sentient beings, the way species treated each other, the understanding that every life had value. Jake Morrison had not tried to change the galaxy. He had only tried to get justice for his wife. But in doing so, he taught everyone an important lesson. Humans would not accept injustice quietly. They would not let their people be hurt without response. They would stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. Even when it risked conflict. Even when the easy path was to just accept things as they were. That was what made humans special in the galaxy. Not their technology, not their ships or weapons, but their stubborn refusal to abandon each other, their loyalty, their willingness to fight for those they loved. Other species had these traits too in some measure, but humans had them in abundance. It was core to who they were. The stars came out one by one as darkness fell on New Hope. Jake and Lisa went inside for dinner. Tomorrow they had a cargo run to a nearby colony. Nothing exciting, just routine work, the kind of peaceful life they had built together, the kind of life they had fought for and earned. Somewhere in the galaxy, a young alien was learning about humans for the first time, reading about their history, their customs, their psychology, and learning the most important lesson, the lesson that Station Kepler had taught. When you hurt a human, you answer to all humans. When you threaten their tribe, they respond with overwhelming force. When you test their resolve, you discover it is unbreakable. That young alien would carry this knowledge through their life. They would treat humans with respect. They would settle disputes fairly. They would never raise a hand in anger against a human. Because they knew what happened when you did. They knew the story of Lisa Morrison and what her husband did to get her justice. The story would be told for generations. It would evolve and change, but its message would remain clear. Humans protected their own, always without exception. That was not a threat, it was simply a fact, as reliable as gravity, as constant as the stars. And so the galaxy learned to live with humans, to trade with them, to work beside them, to respect them, because the alternative was to face what happened at Station Kepler, to see human ships gathering, to watch as they refused to back down, to discover that these stubborn, emotional, fiercely loyal beings would move stars to protect one of their own. In the end, that was the true legacy of Jake and Lisa Morrison. Not the specific rules that changed, not the treaties that were signed, but the understanding that spread through the galaxy, the knowledge that became common wisdom. Touch a human without cause, hurt someone's family member, harm any member of their tribe, and you would learn exactly why that was a mistake. Every single time.